Bulger's mob enforcer, Kevin Weeks, says he buried the bodies, moved the guns, and collected the cash.
Shamrocks in the harbor, tales of bloody water. Saints and sinners trade their vows for the dollar. Whisper in the alley, deals carved in granite. Boston breeds kings and ghosts cold and frantic. American made, blood on the sleeve. Loyalty's a crown, wear it till you bleed. Shadows in the streets, power speaks plain. Under city lights, kingdoms rise from pain. Whiskey in the veins, pipes hum in the dark. Church bells echo deals, sinister hallmark. Enforcer with the hammer, iron in his hands. Clovers turn crimson, painted by the glance. American made, blood on the sleeve. Loyalty's a crown, wear it till you bleed. Shadows in the streets, power speaks plain. Under city lights, kingdoms rise from pain.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for checking out American Made. Today, I'm excited to welcome a returning guest to the channel. He was the right-hand man to the notorious Irish mob boss, James Whitey Bulger. He's also the author of the book, Brutal, the untold story of my life inside Whitey Bulger's Irish mob. My guest today is Kevin Weeks. Kevin, welcome back to the channel, man. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Glad to have you back. Well, as I mentioned, man, you came on the channel before, and for anyone that didn't see that first video, we'll put the link down below so they can go back and check it out. There's so much to your story. To start off with, could you just tell us a little bit about your background and your childhood?
Oh yeah. Born in 1956. I grew up in the colony projects. My family, we weren't wealthy or anything. It was 6 children, my mother and father. Went to local schools and graduated when I was 18 from high school. Then I met up with Jim Bulger.
In the book, you discuss several different fights that you were involved in as a kid. Now, it seems that the neighborhood really helped to make you a tough kid, but also it was your home life, especially your father, that seemed to make you tough as well. He seemed like a pretty tough man. Could you talk about some stories with your father and what kind of man he was?
Well, I mean, give you for instance, I was about 10 years old and had a fight with my neighbor. I think he was like 11. And so anyways, he punched me and I walked away. I didn't do anything. And my uncle Artie, my father's uncle, was upstairs in the house. He was up from New York. And he was looking out the window when he saw the whole thing. So he says to my father, Jack, what are you raising, a bunch of cowards? My father was like, what? So he told him about the kid punching me and me walking away and stuff. So I come in the house, and my father ran up to me. Well, not ran up to me, jumped up off the couch, and he hit me an open hand slap. I went sprawling. Yeah, I was 10 years old. I started crying and stuff. He says, now who hits harder, me or him? I said, you did. He says, back down there. So I went down there, and I fought the kid, and I beat him up pretty good. And I was crying the whole time I was hitting him because my father hit me. And I was saying to him, you know, stuff like, you see what my father did because of you? And then I come up, and my father just looked at me and says, all right, get in your room. That was it. You know, you didn't have to win every fight, but you had to fight.
Eventually, you get into boxing as well as your brothers. How did you do as a boxer?
Well, I did pretty well. I did 78 amateur fights. I lost 2. I started fighting when I was 4, boxing.
Oh, wow.
And like I said, my older brothers, they were boxers and stuff. So we used to spar in the parlor with gloves on. No, naturally, they took it easy on me. But that's how I started. And we used to box in the parlor all the time. And then eventually I started going to the gym and working out and boxing up there.
Now, your father, well, he was a boxer as well when he was
Yeah,
younger.
yeah, he was a tough man. He was a middleweight, and he was ranked in the professional division middleweight. But my father had a bad temper. He didn't drink though, thank God.
Hmm.
But he was a violent guy.
Your brothers, they eventually go on to graduate from Harvard. You were on track to go as well. Why do you think that they went in one direction and you eventually go in another direction?
Well, my brothers were older than me, you know, and so when I was 14, they were all gone. They were, in college and stuff. And so my brother Jack reached out, and he had a friend of his, John Marquand, who's dean of admissions. He told him about me and everything, and so I got in basically as a legacy, you know, and but it wasn't for me. Just at that point, I'd been out, I don't know how long, and I was working, I was making money and stuff, and my father had a heart attack, and my mother had severe arthritis, so I was working and bringing money home.
In 1976, you left high school and went to work at a bar called Triple O's. One night while you're working at the door, a fight breaks out and a guy ends up pulling out a hatchet on you. Can you talk about that night and how that played out and what happened there?
Yeah, I was at the door, and the guy was trying to come in, and I wouldn't let him in, and it was late. We were closing up, and he was trying to come in, and like I said, I wouldn't let him in. So all of a sudden, I turn around, he comes back, he's got a hatchet, like this, and he's trying to come at me. I grabbed a baseball bat I had beside the door, and I went out after him, and he took off running up the street, and I ran after him, and he dropped the hatchet while he was running. So I picked it up and I chased him down and I gave it back to him, except they stuck it in his back. So while he was running, the hatchet was like flopping as he
Man,
ran, you know.
and that was the last you ever saw of this guy?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Man. Yeah, I know in the book you detail a lot of wild fights that went on there.
Yeah, he was, he was trying to give me the hatchet, so I just gave it back to him.
Right. Now, while working at Triple O's, you eventually meet James Whitey Bulger. Can you talk about meeting him for the first time and how your relationship with him took off from there?
Well, I mean, he used to come in the bar on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, not all the time, Saturday mostly, sometimes Friday. And he'd come in and he'd see me and he'd say hello, I'd say hello. And that was it. And then as time passed, we'd have conversations, you know, and it just developed from there. And then one day I was standing outside and he picked me up and drove up Broadway and there was some guy there. And whatever, Jimmy had words and whatever, I get out of the car and I gave him a beat. So the next day, Jimmy comes by and he sees me. He gives me an envelope with $1,000 in it.
Mm.
It's 1974, 75. It's a
Right.
lot of money back then. And so, I said, thank you. So from about a week later, he picked me up again. And there was this fellow that supposedly slapped his niece. So we went looking for him. We found him. We drove up M Street Park. And Jim Bulger turned around. He was driving. I was in the back seat with the fellow, and he punched him. And then I just started punching him, you know. And as a matter of fact, Jimmy broke my hand. The kid had a sap, a leather sap on his back, and Jimmy took it out, started swinging at him, and he hit me in the hand and broke my hand.
Man.
but I didn't know it at the time, And so we beat him up, and we were back down the bar. We picked him up and we threw him out. And a couple of his friends come out of the bar, like, what happened, all this stuff. So I knocked out one of them, and they were like, "Oh, we didn't know it was you." So that was the end of that. So I seen Jimmy later on. He gave me 5,000.
Wow.
So I beat up two people in the course of a week, and I got $6,000. You kidding me? I said, who else do you want beat up? He started laughing.
Yeah.
And then over time, we just got closer and closer.
How long after meeting Whitey Bulger did you meet his partner, Stephen the Rifleman Flemmy?
Oh, I met him about the same time. They used to come in together. Stevie was a nice guy. Had a nice way about him, you know. I mean, my first impression, I just thought he was a nice person.
Did you, at the time, did you know who Stevie and Whitey Bulger was? Like, did you actually
Oh,
know
yeah. Yeah.
who they were?
Yeah, I knew who they were since I was probably 13. The first time I actually saw them.
What, before you really met them, what was their reputation there in Boston? I mean, I know we know now, looking back, about Whitey Bulger, but at that time, what was the reputation there in Boston?
Well, when I first saw him, I was 13. I mean, he was a gangster, you know, and they were killers. And they were the organized crime in Boston, in South Boston at the time, and elsewhere. So I mean, everybody knew who they were. People didn't know what they looked like, though.
So in 1982, you go with Whitey Bulger full time.
Right.
What were some of the rackets that you got involved with him once you started with him full time?
Oh, I mean, at that point, I was bookmaking and loan sharking and stuff like that. And then when I joined up with him, it was a bigger scale. Uh, Believe it or not, less blowback. People that borrowed money paid right away. You know, and as far as my fighting kind of dwindled down a little bit. People didn't want to screw with you because they knew you were with Whitey and Stevie and stuff. So it was kind of a calm period, believe it or not.
I mean, he seemed to really take a liking to you and accept you and bring you into the fold. You were younger than him. What do you
Oh,
think I mean, what did y'all have a friendship? I mean, what was it that brought you in?
yeah, I mean, we had a friendship. He was always good to me. Uh, you know, I was attracted to the life myself.
Right.
You know, I mean, you're getting respect and everything, and people defer to you, and you're making a boatload of money. I mean, we had money coming in from so many different directions. Like he used to say, it's like taking a bucket and putting it out in the rain. All those little drops add up, and that's how it was. All those little drops, all those little money coming from here and there and everywhere. At the end of the week, it added up.
Right. Right. Now, the last time that we spoke, we talked about the first hit that you were involved in. This time I wanted to ask you about the first body that you participated in burying in this house that was the scene of three different homicides. Uh, the first murder in this house and the first body that you buried was a guy named Bucky Barrett.
Right.
Talk about what led up to this and how it went down.
Uh, Bucky Barrett was a safe cracker, and he used to break into banks and all that. Very skilled. Actually, a nice guy. And they had robbed the Medford Depository Trust in Boston over, I think it was like a Labor Day weekend or a 4th of July weekend, one of the holiday weekends. And Jimmy and Stevie wanted a cut of the action. And they grabbed Bucky. And they told him they wanted their percent. Some of their money was in that bank and stuff. And Bucky went to Frankie Salem. Frankie Salem was partners with Stevie. He went away for the bombing for Fitzgerald, and Stevie took off to Canada. And when everything died down, like 5 years later, Stevie came back. So they were, at that time, they were partners on the street and everything. They had a working relationship. But in the meantime, Jimmy joined up with, Stevie joined up with Jimmy, who went to Hill. So they were partners. So Bucky reached out to Frankie. So let me in prison. And Frankie reaches out to Stevie and basically he says he's with me. So, meaning he can't be touched, Frankie and Stevie can't stop Frankie from making a living. The guy's doing 17, 18 years.
Right.
So they had to back away. never sat right with them. So one day we were over in Dorchester. We went to a travel agent. We were going up the stairs, and coming down the stairs was Bucky Barrett. Just hey, how you doing, Bubba? He was seeing his probation officer. That was the building he worked out of. There was also a travel agency in there.
Mm.
So that piqued Jimmy's interest when he saw him. So then he started talking about, shaking him down and everything. So we had Bucky come and meet us, actually meet me. He was interested in diamonds, and I was supposed to be a diamond thief, jewelry thief with all kinds of diamonds. So he came in the house to meet me. I shook his hand, grabbed him, pulled him towards me, and Jimmy stepped out with the Mac 10 380. No, 9mm. Stepped out with that, and Bucky freeze. And then Stevie chained him up to the chair and stuff. And eventually he was killed. Jimmy didn't think he could trust him.
Right.
He got money off him, but he said as soon as he leaves, he's going to be telling people. So he got killed.
And buried in that basement.
Yeah.
Whose house was this?
It was a friend of ours, a socializer. It was his brother's house. So we had easy access to it.
Gotcha. Now, I've heard you say that you found out years later that after this hit, Stephen Flemmi told Whitey Bulger that you needed to be taken out after this hit. What was that about?
Yeah, I found that out years later. He didn't like the way I reacted. Bucky was walking on the stairs and put 4 in his head. That was it for him. And he didn't like the way I reacted, because what happened was we were digging the hole to bury him and everything, and I walked upstairs, and on the table was his wallet. It was open, and there was a picture of a little 2-year-old girl there, blonde girl, beautiful little girl. I didn't know if it was his daughter or me, whatever. And I looked at the picture, and I went, what the fuck,
Right. Yeah, that's tough.
And, I didn't know if she lost her father or whatever. Anyways, Stevie did like it. And Jimmy says to him, what are you talking about? He says, it's normal. He just had a baby himself, I don't like the way he acted. He goes, what? Because he saw the picture? He says, forget about it. He says, no. He says, he's going to have to go. Jimmy told him, Stevie, you ain't touching that kid. Don't forget, he was like 27 years older than me or whatever. Mm-hmm. He says, you ain't touching that kid. And Steve was like, well, he goes, you touch him. He says, I'm going to kill you. Steve was like, what? Because they were partners. Stevie was real dangerous too.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, there's no reason. I found that out, I don't know, 20-something years later when I got arrested. You hear on the tapes and reading things and everything that he wanted to kill me. I was like, that mother.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, it wasn't crazy, because most of the people that got killed around us were friends of ours. And that's what organized crime does. They kill the people closest to them. Yeah,
well, that's a good point. But I was just his mindset is, to me, it sounds crazy. Just because you reacted that way, that seems like a normal thing, a normal way to react.
Yeah, I was, let me see. That happened in 82, so I was 26 years old.
Yeah.
And I just had a baby, a son. And I just felt bad when I seen the little girl's picture, Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't tears or anything. I was just like, what the, come on.
Right. Yeah.
And we weren't supposed to kill the guy. We were supposed to shake him down. That's all it was, we were going to shake him down for money. And Jimmy decided at the end he couldn't trust him, and he got killed.
Gotcha. Now, the second person taken out in this house was John McIntyre. Now, this involved ammunition, weapon smuggling, and a ship called the Valhalla.
Yeah.
What led up to the death of John McIntyre?
Well, he was one of the crew members. He was the mechanic on the Valhalla. And we shipped that over to Ireland to the IRA, and it had 7 tons of weapons and ammunition on it and stuff. Well, There was a informant over there. I think they call him Supergrass or whatever. Yeah, Sean O'Callahan, and he was in the IRA, and but he was telling the British what was going on, and so they got notification. They followed the Marita in out of dry dock out into the ocean. They had planes up and everything, and they intercepted the Valhalla, and they got all the weapons. Well, they got away. They came back to Boston, drove through a hurricane, everything, lost all the windows in the boat, and it's a fishing trawler. So, anyways, when you get back, they're getting off the boat. It's him and the captain, Jim Anderson, and they're getting off the boat, and they're intercepted by customs agents. Well, customs can't hold them, so they let them go. A couple of weeks later, McIntyre is drunk. And he goes over to his girlfriend's house. I think it was his girlfriend or his ex-wife, so whatever, his girlfriend's. And he tried to get in. He climbed through the window. She called the cops. Cops came and arrested him. He had a restraining order on him. So the most he was going to do was like maybe 90 days, if that, you know. And he ended up making a deal with the police, you know. Well, the problem with that is the Quincy police and different people were talking. And, you know, what was in the bar talking? We got someone right next to Whitey and those guys. We're going to get them and all that stuff. Naturally, it came right back to us. We heard it. And we were told that one of the two people that got stopped coming off the boat that day. So anyways, it was either Anderson or McIntyre. Now, Anderson was an older man, you know, throwback type guy. And but McIntyre was a younger guy. He was around. Well, anyways, we alured McIntyre in, got him to come in the house saying there's going to be a party. He come down with another fellow carrying beer. And when he come in, I grabbed him by the throat, the back of the head, and I put him on the ground. I was choking him. And again, Jimmy stepped out with the gun, told me to stop. He said, "You're going to kill him." So anyways, let him up. He went and charged the chain to the chair and everything. And within a minute, he was telling us everything. You know, I was weak. I'm sorry. You know, but he told us what he told them, everything. So the story originally was that we were going to send him off to, I think it was either South America or Spain. One of Joe Murray, who owned the Valhalla, who was a big drug dealer, and he was on with the cause, the IRA. So Joe Murray had connections down there. We were going to send them down there until the grand jury's over. But they started asking about everything, drug operation, everything. They're already on to the next score. You know, they got this guy sitting there, but they're looking for what's next. And he told them, and, you know, everything. And then took him downstairs and tried to strangle him with the rope, but the rope was too thick, so he couldn't get it tight enough. So Jimmy just shot him in the back of the head. You know, that was the end of him. And we buried him.
Now, you say in the book that he was trying to choke him, and like you just said, it wouldn't choke him out. And
No.
and Whitey Bulger asked him, "Does he want one in the head?" And
he said, "Yes, please."
Now, you write in the book that Whitey Bulger would typically take a nap after killing someone.
Yeah.
Is that something he would normally do?
Yeah, he's, you know, he'd go upstairs and lay down, stuff, fall asleep. You know, we'd be downstairs and digging a hole and getting the body ready and everything. You know, taking out the teeth, all that, and you know, he'd be up there sleeping. It was like a sedative for him. You know.
Wow. The third murder in this house was the stepdaughter, a girl, of Stephen the Rifleman Fleming, Deborah Hussey.
Yep.
What led to that situation?
Well, I didn't know the whole story at the time, but I found out later. Supposedly she was talking to law enforcement, you know. She was prostituting. She was bringing black guys back to the house. The mother was complaining all the time to Stevie. And she should have known. All she's doing is hyping this guy up, you know. And I didn't know that Stevie. She was 3 years old when Stevie started raising her. And then later on, as she got older, Stevie started having sex with her stepdaughter. You know, yeah. So, you know, she come in the house with Stevie under the guise that they were going to buy the house Stevie was going to buy for her and stuff. And then she got choked out and she was killed.
Now, this being a female, did you feel any different one way or the other, or how did you feel after that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, at that point, when you see the girl get killed, you realize that nobody's off limits. It could happen to anybody, including myself. No one was off limits.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just how dangerous that lifestyle is.
Yeah. Now, with everything that happened in that house, 6 months later, the house was sold, which forced you, Whitey, and Stevie to have to dig up these bodies. That sounds like a pretty gruesome task. What was it like digging up these bodies, and what did you do with them?
In the beginning, it wasn't bad. I mean, Bucky Barrett was basically, we put the wrong lie on him, so he was mummified. And when we were taking the body off, his head broke off.
Oh, man.
He just threw that in the bag. And then the girl, she was buried on top of McIntyre because he had more room on that side. And I was digging her up and kind of scraping with a pick and stuff. And then there was a hard spot, and I threw the pick in. Thought it was a rock or whatever. And I pulled it. But what happened was the pick went into the abdominal cavity, and it's just exploded.
Oh, damn.
And she was only there for 6 months, and that's when the smell
Whew.
hit everybody. You know, and the same thing with McIntyre. We took him out and stuff. It was just, you know, flesh, decayed flesh, and body parts, everything. So it smelled.
Yeah.
It wasn't a pleasant task. And we had 3 body bags. We just put them in the body bags and then waited till nighttime to take them out of the house.
Where did you go with them?
Right over Dorchester, not far, maybe like 3-4 miles. We already had a hole pre-dug. We knew we were moving them and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So when we went over there the night before, we dug the hole. Then what we did is the dirt we took out, we put it into duffel bags, big army duffel bags,
Mm-hmm.
and fill them up. And then after we had the hole deep enough and everything, we took the duffel bags and laid them back in the hole, and then covered it with some extra dirt. And took a rock and put a $20 bill under the rock. So when we got there, if that bill was gone, we knew someone was there, you know. I went over the next day and next night, excuse me. It was actually a Halloween weekend. And we took the bags out, dumped the bodies in, covered them over, and that was it. It was real quick that night.
And you said it was Halloween?
It was that weekend of Halloween, yeah.
Man, that's wild. That's
yeah, there's a
burying
party going
bodies
on
on
across
Halloween.
the street, a Halloween party across the street at the what was it, the Florian Hall. That's the firefighter post.
Mm. Yeah, that particular chapter in the book is pretty wild. Talking about these 3 different homicides in that house. Now there are surveillance pictures out there of Bulger meeting with different bosses in the Italian mafia. What was the relationship between the Winter Hill gang and the Italian mob?
It was a working relationship. You know, it was a working relationship. No one wanted a problem because everyone was making money. So if you have a problem, you can't make money.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a working relationship, you know.
I wanted to ask you about a liquor store that you and Whitey had. In the news a few years back, the previous owners came out and said they had been shaken down for this and forced to sell the store. At the time, it was called Stippo's. Even saying that there was a gun put in their child's mouth and a lot of other things. I wanted to get
That's
your
all
side
lies.
and the real story from you and see what happened there involving this liquor store.
He opened a liquor store. He only had it open about 3 weeks. And he owed all kinds of money. He let on to us that he owned everything, including the stock. So his sister come down the bar. We had a bar at F in 2nd Street, Courts Inn. And his sister come down the bar, and she was looking for Whitey, Sister Mary. And I said, he'll be down in about 15 minutes. She says, yeah, I know, I'm waiting for him. I said, okay. And so she sat in the booth. He came in. I told him she was over there. He walked over. They sat down. They talked. A few minutes later, he called me over. And he says, Stipple wants to sell the liquor store. You interested? And I says to him, not really. I said, I don't even like him. You know? And I said, he didn't give me a look like, I said, well, I said, I can't hear it to listen. So we went down the store and then eventually met him up his house because he didn't want to talk in front of his father and his wife and everybody. Mm. Met him up the house. We agreed on a price, got the cash. The next day, went up the house and basically he was looking for more money off us. You know? And we weren't paying it. No gun was put in the daughter's mouth or anything like that. I had my pistol on me. I took it out and put it on the table, you know? And Jimmy pushed it away, pushed it over me. He goes, no. And I said, we get a deal. I says, you're the one that, come up with the price and everything. I says, now you're trying to get more money off us? It's not happening. And Jimmy basically reiterated the same thing and stuff. So we ended up buying it. Now I get down there, he don't own any liquor. Matter of fact, he owes for it. He doesn't own the building. He didn't pay for any of the construction work done, any of the shelving, the chests, beer coolers, nothing. I had to pay for everything. He didn't pay for a thing. He was a bullshit artist. And I told Jimmy before, we went down there, I said, I don't like him. I said, he screwed everybody. He won't screw us. Yep. So we end up buying it, and we get it, and the story's going around Southie that we hung him off a bridge, and he was dead, and all this stuff. He was down in Florida with his family. They went down to Disney World. So I called him up and had him come back and stand outside the store so everyone knew he was alive. He wasn't dead, His law enforcement was hearing it and everything. And then years later, he went in front of a grand jury. He told them the truth. He got $100,000, blah, blah, blah. But he told his wife he only got $67,000. So he gets $100,000. He takes $25,000, keeps it himself. Takes the other $8,000, pays off the carpenter. Okay? Mm-hmm. And he tells her they only got $65,000. He didn't tell how much they really got. Years later, they got divorced. He opened a store with her father and him, a jewelry store, and he was robbing the place blind. I mean, that's his nature, Mm. So, it didn't go down the way he said it did, He wasn't shaken down or anything.
Right.
When Whitey went to trial, Steppo was telling him when he was going to testify, he was going to set the record straight, he was going to do this, he was going to do that. The next day, he was dead. One of his old business partners that he had screwed, and he was claiming had screwed him, poisoned him. Guy was just a Casper milquetoast. He wasn't a tough guy or anything. He met Steppo. Steppo was trying to get his $65,000 off him or something, and the guy was, trying to delay it. And so they pulled over to McDonald's. The guy went in, got 2 coffees, come out, gave Steppo coffee. He had a coffee, he was sitting in the car drinking. Here's the funny part: Steppo took a couple of sips and spit it out. He goes, "Oh, this is terrible." So the guy, I think his name was Camus, says, "Give me that." He took the coffee, he went back at McDonald's, dumped that out. Went to McDonald's and got him another one, but he just didn't put as much in. So he gave it to Steppo, and Steppo was driving around with him. He was driving the car, and Steppo was in the passenger side. It took about 3 hours, but he died. He poisoned him.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because he was like on the news during the trial and making all kinds of comments. And then the next thing you know, they're reporting that he's mysteriously dead.
Yeah.
And found in the woods or something like that.
Lincoln, yeah.
I didn't know that he was poisoned. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a shame it happened. Couldn't happen to a nicer kid. Yeah. Well, don't forget, his first wife or mother of his daughter was beaten to death with a frying pan.
Mm.
Okay. He was Boston Fire investigation. I mean, over 24 pieces of property that he bought and was flipping went up in fire. Arson. One lady died in the fire. You know,
Mm.
he wasn't a nice guy, believe me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to get your side on that because I know that the media, you talk about it in the book, how they really pushed that narrative from their
Yeah, they don't.
side.
Well, see, the media up here, they didn't like Billy Bulger. He was the Senate president
Hmm.
because he wouldn't give in to them, and he did what he could do for his yeah, constituents.
Right.
And he was always trying to help people out south. They didn't like him, so anything negative they can write, they would write. You know, never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Yeah, that's how it is. It's even worse nowadays, I think. Um, Now, at this store, I wanted to ask you, at one point, Whitey Bulger wins the lottery and cashes in on a $14 million lottery ticket.
Yeah, four of us
Um,
did.
yeah, how did it was there's been speculations that he muscled in on this
No,
ticket, and
no,
what was
they
going on there?
stopped all that. They know the truth. What happened was it was around Christmas time, and we had a bunch of people working in the stores and friends and different things. We didn't get anybody anything like those people, and so Patty was there, Patty Linsky, and he bought 15 season tickets. It's like $1,500. He's going to give them to people. We said, "Oh, I'll give you the money." Yeah. He goes, "No, no, no, it's on me." So he gave me a ticket, and my wife, Sue, different people, people that work down the store and stuff, his brother Michael, all this. So when we gave the tickets out, it was more or less a joke. Now, if we hit, we're partners,
Yeah.
Who's going to hit? No one's going to hit. Anyways, I was up in New Hampshire, and July, Michael hit the lottery. His ticket come up, season ticket. And Patty meets him. He says to Patty, he said, "Oh, we want." Patty he says, "I'm partners with Kevin and Whitey." He goes, "You do what you want with your half." He said, "I don't care." And Patty split it with us. And that was it. It was all legit.
Yeah,
Matter
I
of fact,
just
they weighed the balls on the machine and they took it apart. They did all this investigation. It was all legit. You know.
yeah, I was just curious. I know there was some speculation. I just wanted to see what was really going on there.
Worst thing that happened to us.
Why is that?
Yeah, just
The exposure?
put the heat all over us. It was in the
Yeah.
papers, the news, the police, FBI, DEA, you name it. Just put everybody on us.
Mm. Now, I wanted to ask you about the Winter Hill Gang's involvement in the drug business. You write in the book that Whitey Bulger didn't allow heroin to be sold in South Boston. So
Yeah.
what involvement did he have with drugs other than heroin?
Well, angel dust. We kept them out, but the pot was big. You know, I mean, everybody was smoking. So this guy, a friend, he just got out of prison and stuff, and he was hungry and he was looking to put together to make some money. So his idea he came up with was to grab all the pot dealers, make them buy it off of him, and whatever money he got, he was pay Whitey, you know. So he said, okay. Now the first time he did, he wanted me to go with him to grab all these people, and Jimmy comes in. I says, no, I don't want anything to do with him. Jimmy says, good, because I don't want you to go with him. So, anyways, he got another guy, tough kid, and they started shaking down the drug dealers. And money was coming in. They were selling it to them. They had to buy it off them and stuff. So everything was good. And then they grabbed this one guy. He was a pretty good marijuana distributor and stuff.
Mhm.
And he turned them on to coke. he taught him how to take coke and reprocess it, cut it and everything, repackage it, in presses and stuff, which they started doing. And then that was serious money then. That was a lot of money coming in then. And that's how, he was still paying Whitey. So, he was in the coke business and the pot business, and he was paying to do business. So that's how we got into it. We really didn't get into it. We were extorting drug dealers.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, a guy you briefly mentioned, a guy in the book, John Red Shea, and his involvement in the drug business. Now he's done a few interviews on YouTube, on some other channels. What was his involvement with you and Whitey Bulger?
he was a mid-level drug dealer. He was selling like ounces, stuff like that. Every once in a while, he'd go down to Florida, have someone go down and bring back kilos, a couple at a time, and he'd sell them to people. That was his, he was just like a mid-level drug dealer. Well, he was with this girl one night who was a friend of mine. When I say a friend, I've known her since grammar school. And he was drinking and stuff. He was up at her apartment, and he started shooting the place up.
Mm.
And she says, "I'm telling Kevin and White." He goes, basically tell him, "Yeah, tell him to go after himself. I don't care." And blah blah blah. Well, she came down and told us. So I reached out for him, had him go down the store, and I pulled I had an Ingram, machine gun, Israeli machine gun, and I pulled it on him. And basically, I ended up fining him $25,000, and he had to pay monthly rent now. And that was his, involvement. I got to like the kid, I really did. And but then after everything was over and stuff, he's one of these guys to like the Army, the old recruiting poster, "Be all you can be."
Mm-hmm.
So he wrote a book, and there's a lot of embellishment in there. I'll be nice, things that he didn't do. He's head of a drug organization. He said, "Well, that was Billy Shea and those guys when it first started."
Right.
Back in the, he wasn't he was a kid,
Yeah.
And he said when he was 20 years old, he was running a drug organization. I mean, come on, will you?
Mm-hmm.
We had all guys from us, hardened criminals, killers, everything else, and he's telling them what to do. Are you serious? And I mean,
Yeah,
he just
I was
embellished a
curious.
lot.
Yeah, I was curious how close he was with Bulger, because it seems
Oh yeah, he was his bodyguard and all kinds of stuff. He
yeah.
says, yeah, except he was never around us, except for once a month of every once in a while he'd come by to say hi.
Mm.
He'd come by once a month to pay the money. And that's the thing. It's DEA and the state police, everybody, in the investigation, they all called him on. He's full of shit.
Mm.
He wasn't around, as much as he likes to think.
Yeah.
He was the angel of death, he says. He's in the car with Whitey Bulger and myself and this other kid that he's having a problem with. I'm trying to straighten it out. And in his book, he says, "Little do they know the angel of death." I mean, Whitey's saying he's the angel of death. He'll blow his fucking head off.
Mm.
He was nothing.
Right.
You know?
Now, I wanted to ask you about this other guy that I've seen on YouTube that claims he was like Whitey Bulger's personal assassin or something like that. This guy, Sean Hicks. Who is this guy?
No one knows him. No one knows him. He's not from South Boston. I think he's out in Worcester now. He claims he did 26 years. But, people that were in prison and people that got out and people that are in different positions looked up his record. I think the longest time he did was 2 years. He's usually in there for beating up his wife, his girlfriend, whatever. He did like county bits, 6 months here, a year there. But he probably did a total of maybe 7 years, not 26.
Mm.
He said he was involved in dozens of stabbing while in prison. He didn't stab anyone. Matter of fact, he took a PC, protected custody.
Mm-hmm.
He says, what was the other thing? it's just so many lies from this person. No one knows him. He didn't do anything with us. He said we sent him up to a place up in northeastern New England. No one refers to northeastern New England, you know. And he says he was at basically they taught him how to shoot everything.
Yeah.
That's, come on, will you?
Like,
what do we need him for?
Yeah. Says he was
He
trained
was
or
like
something.
15 years old. Are you serious?
Yeah. Yeah, I know a lot of stuff didn't add up. I was like,
No, none of it does. None of it
Yeah.
does. He's one of these guys that wrote a book and trying to sell it, and he's bullshit out. Most of the stuff he says you can read other places, and he doesn't. He has no facts on nothing, because he didn't do anything.
Well, he refers to you as his uncle.
Yeah, I'm his uncle's. Pat was his uncle. Whitey was his uncle. We're all his uncles. Never met him in my life.
Yeah, that's crazy. I don't know how some people are able to get book deals, and
I don't know how the book deal gave it to him.
Yeah.
All they had to do was do a little checking into it, and they would have found out that it was all nonsense.
Yeah.
I mean, he did 26 years. He did like 7 years total. And that was on the installment plan.
Right.
He stabbed these. Oh, and then he's got these teardrop tattoos on his eye, below his eye. There's 3 of them there, and they're colored in red. So he's talking to a guy at one of his interviews, and he says, "Well, I noticed you got those." He goes, "Those are red teardrops." And the guy says, "Well, yeah, what's the difference?" He goes, "Well, red ones, each one means 5 bodies. He's got 15 bodies." Okay, But no one knows who you are. But you're killing all these people. You're stabbing all these people. You're doing all this time. It was just the whole premise of his book and everything was just one big lie.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought. I just wanted to, I was pretty sure you would confirm that. Another thing that I wanted to ask you about, and a lot of people that saw the last video commented this question. They wanted to hear your side of this story. Everybody probably watching this is familiar with Dana White, the president of UFC. I've heard him tell a story on multiple interviews about you specifically shaking him down in Boston, which apparently scared him so bad he fled to Vegas, and next thing you know, he's involved with UFC, and then it becomes a huge thing.
I don't know why he'd leave. He's such a tough guy.
So what really happened there? What was
he was partners with the kid, Peter Welch, who had a boxing gym. Peter Welch, there was money missing, and it led all the way back to Dana White, who was his partner. It was like $1,500. So Peter Welch and a good friend is Peter Lee, who's also an associate of mine, went down and they grabbed him. And Peter said, give him his money. He was going to, give him a beat and blah, 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 blah. He left. He went out to, California, and the rest is history, how he hooked up with those 2 brothers out there, whatever, He's another bullshit artist. And he said that the reason he left is because I was threatening him and I was shaking him down. I had nothing to do with it. I never even met the bum, I mean, I wish he was back here now with all his money. At least if I'm going to shake him down, I got to get something good. But it's just not a true story, but it gives him street cred. The wise guys were after him. No one was after him. It was his partner, just a regular guy, nicest kid you could meet, And he wanted his money back, the $1,500 that he stole. He stole it off himself too, because he was partners in the business. Shows you what character he has.
Yeah, I've heard him detail this story on several interviews, and I wanted to hear it from you. I've never heard you actually talk about that, so I was just curious as to what went down there.
I had 0 involvement in the whole thing, but when I was talking to Peter Welch about it, he started laughing. He says, "Kevin," he says, "it makes better copy to say it was you,
Yeah.
rather than saying it was him and Peter. No one knows who we are, but everyone knows who
Right.
you are. That's what makes better copy than for him to get shooken down, by you. I said, yeah, okay.
Gotcha. Now, moving forward, all throughout your time with Whitey Bulger, you had sources in law enforcement that would give you information. In 1994, a former FBI agent, John Conley, gave you a message about an upcoming indictment. That turned out to be the beginning of Whitey Bulger going on the run. How soon after you gave him this information did he take off?
30 minutes.
30 minutes.
30 minutes. I called him
Mm.
on his.
So he had everything lined up
Oh yeah,
already.
he was prepared for years, going back to the 80s. He had IDs, everything, money, guns, everything put away. And Conley told me that the indictments were imminent. They're going to try to put them together over the holidays. It was Christmas, and I called him up, beeped him. He came down the store, picked me up. We drove over to Copley Plaza, a group of stores in Boston. We get out of the car. We talked. Teresa was with him. She was going shopping for Christmas. So two of us, we get out of the car and we talked. I told him. He said, all right. We got back in the car with Teresa, drove back to Salty, dropped me off, and he was gone. Gone. Right then. Stevie, I seen Stevie later in the day. I told him, kept on telling me his guy's right in there. He's on top of everything. I got plenty of time. So I told him, I said, Stevie, only 4 people know, and they're all in the FBI. So your guy don't know. I says, go. I says, go away for a couple of weeks. If nothing happens, it's a vacation. If something happens, it's a head start. Oh, he hung around and he got pinched. He thought he had time.
Right.
He's still in prison.
Now, I know it was several years later, but you eventually find out that Whitey Bulger was not only receiving information from law enforcement, but he was also given information. In fact, Bulger and Flemmy were top echelon informants. How did you find this out?
I was at home. I don't know, 11 o'clock news or whatever. I was laying on the couch, had the window open, the fan, smoking a cigar, and I was reading a book. I listened to the news, and all of a sudden they come on the news. It's hitting shocking developments. Steve Flemmy on the stands, this is not verbatim, but basically admits that him and James Bulger have been FBI informants. And I couldn't believe it. I didn't think I heard it right. So I stayed up till I caught the late rerun of the news. And then the next day, I got up and I went down the store, and all people were coming up to me, guys that were with us and everything. No one knew. It was a sick feeling.
Yeah, I'm sure it devastated you. I mean, everything that you had thought of Whitey Bulger all those years.
Yeah, everything I believed in. I mean,
Yeah.
I was always taught, you don't rat on your friends, you don't rat on your enemies. You get a problem, we take it to the street. And that's how we operate. That's how I operate,
Right.
I mean, someone had some problem, I'd confront them. We all, and then you find out that, and we killed people for being informants. And then you find out that those 2 are FBI informants, I mean, and it goes way back, decades.
Yeah. You ultimately get arrested on November 17th, 1999, and eventually make the decision to cooperate. What were your thoughts during that time, and what led to that decision?
Well, I mean, in the beginning, I was like, okay, it is what it is, And, I had a couple of lawyers. I fired the first one. And he wanted 120,000 for the bail hearing and then 20,000 a week for court and stuff. I says, how long is this going to last? He says, I don't know, 4 or 6 months, something like that. I go, yeah. I says, you're talking about 680,000? I said, I'll give it to my family. I said, you're fired. So I got another lawyer who I knew, Richie Egbert, and he come up and he just laid everything out for me. And then I started reading all the information on them. The 302s, the reports and everything. I was like, I mean, there was people that were friends that were with us and stuff. I consider them friends, and they had given up information on. They had given up information on the mafia, but that was mostly Stevie. Stevie was around them all the time. He was the liaison kind of between Winter Hill and the mafia, you know.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, they were giving up everybody. It was just, you know, and they were killing everybody. No one had a chance. You know, it was gut wrenching. You know, really. Uh, you know, for a while it hurt me that he was an informant.
So that led to your decision to cooperate and.
Well, it wasn't completely. I mean, you know, there was other things that come into effect. Like when I was coming down from the visiting room, and a guy from Rhode Island says, "Because what are you taking up the ass for them? They've been ratting on everybody."
Mm.
And that was one, and then another one was I got a letter from Stevie. Stevie was in Plymouth, being held. He sent it to my sister. My sister forwarded it to me. And basically, he's going over his case and everything. You know, he's standing with the wiretaps and all this stuff. And he's going on. And I'm like, they don't affect me. They don't have me on anything. You know? And then he says, well, my case is going good and good luck with yours. I was like, what? In other words, you're on your own. I was like, and don't forget, in the courtroom during these hearings and stuff, he says my name out in open court. Now they get reason to come after me.
Yeah.
You know, which is, you know, whatever. But when he sent that to me, you know, good luck with your case. You know, I was like, fuck you. And then Johnny Manorano, he seen what was going on with them. I mean, he did a lot for them and everything. And, you know, he made a deal. I'm not protecting them no more. And then I made my deal. You know, you want me to do life for them? I mean, I was willing, and I didn't want to. I was willing to, you know, take a 35-year sentence or whatever. You know, it comes with it. And then when I found out, you know, what they were doing, nah, it's over.
Right. How much time did you end up
6.
doing? 6. How was your time in
Fine.
prison?
Fine. You know,
No issues, no problems.
no. Yeah. You just do your own thing. You work out, you read, you know.
Yeah.
And stuff. It's just, you know.
In 2011, after 16 years on the run, Whitey Bulger is eventually captured. He was convicted of murder.
But first at 5:30, we are working more details after Whitey Bulger is captured. Here is the latest information.
He ended up getting killed in prison.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he was 89 years old. He was in a wheelchair. I mean, you know, and he got killed. You know, he was probably better off than being in a wheelchair in prison and dying in prison, you know. So
now the trial before his death and before his conviction, I know you were a big part of that trial. How was it after so many years of him being on the run and then you're finally face to face with him again? How did that affect you? How did you feel about that?
he wouldn't even look at me. He wouldn't look at me. You know, I mean, you know, after everything I had done for him and, you know, with him and stuff, and you know, he wouldn't look at me. And then we got into a shouting match in there, you know, and his lawyer kept on me because I cooperated. You're all right and stuff. I goes, really? I said, why don't we go outside and you call me that and see what I do to you, you know? And he's like, oh, physical? I said, oh, yeah, I'll hurt you, you know? Nothing bothers you. Nothing bothers you at all. I says, you don't know what bothers me. He says, nothing bothers you. I said, listen, we killed people for being informants. And I was sitting next to the 2 biggest rats. Well, that's when Whitey piped up. He looks at me and goes, you suck. And I looked at him and I goes, fuck you. What? I goes, fuck you. What do you want to do? I said, you couldn't beat me when you were younger. You still can. He's an old man, you know, but I had enough.
Yeah.
You know, the bullshit, you know. And so they made a big thing out of that.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. I remember seeing that in the news. Now, you eventually write a book titled brutal. It's a really good book. I just reread it again. What was that like? The process of writing a book? How was that?
I didn't want to do it. I was in prison and I was being sued for wrongful death, people that we had killed.
Mm.
And so the family's lawyer come up with the idea that my only asset at the time, because the government take everything, and my only asset at the time was my story. So if I wrote the book and they would get the proceeds, that would resolve my civil cases. So instead of coming out of prison and have to pay them money, so he says, okay, I'll write it, and they'll get the money from it. And that's how it happened. And they picked out the co-author, Phyllis Karras.
Mm-hmm.
I think the trustee did, and that's how we got together. I mean, I didn't like writing a book. I left a lot out. I wouldn't write about women. They were upset about that. And I was like, why am I going to write about some woman I was with, or some girl?
Yeah.
I says, who's now married and moved on and have kids and everything. I said, I'm not going to destroy them. There's no reason to talk about them. They had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't talk about women or anything. Wouldn't talk about friends and different things like that. But there was enough without all that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like I said, man, it's a really good book. Where's the best place that people can go to get a copy of your book?
I don't know. I think Amazon books or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, I think I got mine through Amazon a while back. I didn't know if you had a specific website that.
No.
Okay. Are you working on any new books or any new projects now?
Yeah, we got a book that's completed. We're just waiting for the editor and stuff on it. And the working title is Jewel Thief. But we just, I don't know when that's coming out or anything, The gentleman, the agent that's doing it, a great guy. And he did Brutal for us. And he's having family issues going on right now. So he's a little, tied up, but nothing bad. Nothing bad. He's just, so once he gets freed up, he'll jump back on it.
Right. All right, Kevin, man, you have a fascinating story, and I really do appreciate you coming back on the channel to talk about it with me. There's so much information in that book and with your story. It's fascinating. I appreciate you coming on here, man.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, sir. All right, guys. Thanks for checking out this video. Be sure to get a copy of Kevin's book, Brutal. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and keep following American Made. I appreciate it.
Whisper in the alley, deals carved in granite. Boston breeds kings and ghosts cold and frantic. American made, blood on the sleeve. Loyalty's a crown, wear it till you bleed. Shadows in the street.